I don't understand why car manufacturers do this. This is the Vauxhall Corsa or Opel Corsa for those of you in Europe, and I'm sure you're well acquainted with it. For those of you who are at school in the UK at the same time as me, it's likely many of your mates had one of these Corsa Cs in particular as a first car. But the car they probably aspired to have was something like this Polo GTI or this Swift Sport or the Fabia VRS, you know, the sporty versions of the first cars many of us had. So why didn't Vauxhall do that for the Corsa? Well, they did. We just never saw it anywhere. What happened to the Opel Corsa C OPC? Let's find out. Before we get into that, if you're enjoying these short car documentaries, please do let me know by supporting the channel and hitting like, dropping me a comment on the other topics you'd like me to cover, and subscribing for 2 videos every week. Before we can talk about the Corsa, I need 30 seconds to explain what OPC is to my British audience and what VXR is to my European audience, and probably both to everyone else. OPC stands for Opel Performance Centre, established in 1997 and gone as of 2022, which existed to build performance versions of standard Opels. The same goes for VXR, which is the British equivalent, titled Vauxhall Racing, arriving in 2004 and we haven't seen on the road since 2017. Both brands were actually used in race series like VLN and the British Touring Car Championship, and they both took over from GSI as the most performant models, though GSI is still carried on as a level below them. Now, given OPC was established in 1997, with their first influence on a car taking place in 1998, you might have expected the Corsa C, which was released in 2000, to have had an OPC model, especially considering it got a GSI model, so the brand was obviously thinking about giving the car at least a bit of performance. Well, nothing came of it to begin with, and for the first 2 years there was no sign of any performance version of the Corsa. That is until November 2002, when at the Essen Motor Show, Opel showed up with this, the Vauxhall Corsa C OPC, in the typical ardent blue colour that most VXR or OPC cars are promoed in. It came with a 1.6 litre turbocharged inline-4 engine that produced around 180 brake horsepower and would do 0 to 60 in 7.9 seconds. Visually, of course, it was massively different to the standard Corsa C, with the far more aggressive body kit, wider looking track, overall additional aero kit, and 17-inch alloys, making it look way sportier than other OPCs that were available on the market at the time. In terms of performance, it also got a dynamic safety sport chassis, tuned to help the car handle well, and compared to the standard car it was lower by 25mm, again for handling while not compromising safety. The interior too was more aggressive, with these very blue bucket seats, and you can just about spot the blue seats in the rear of the car too. Don't forget those blue seat belts as well, pretty swaggy. That blue on the seats is actually Alcantara, and some of the other fixtures came with a mesh style covering, while you also got more chrome bits throughout to give it a more techno look and feel. So a super cool new hot hat shows up to the Essen Motor Show, but from what I can see online from all my research, there was no major clamour about it being released, and I'll give you a reason for that later on in this video, but for now it's worth noting. That doesn't mean it had no impact though, as of course the Corsa VXR did show up in 2007 with the new generation, plus the stylings on this Corsa are very similar to those that then came on the next generation Astra VXR, Vectra VXR, Meriva VXR and all the rest, so it clearly influenced the design language and decision making by Vauxhall or Opel over the coming years. Again, more on that later. But in terms of that initial impact, there really wasn't very much hype, at least not from what I can see. That is until you get to 2005 on Corsa owners forums here in the UK, where in around July people started talking a lot about the Corsa C OPC, asking questions about whether it was going to hit the roads for real, with lots of people arguing both sides, that it was coming out and that it wasn't. So what happened in 2005 to cause this to happen? Through my research, I've managed to get to some kind of conclusion with this car and why people thought it was going to be released when it never was, and of course, why it was never released. Let's answer the second question first, which after trawling through forums and internet articles in multiple languages, although admittedly mostly German and English, I found this press release from Opel, which dropped sometime towards the end of November in 2002. It says, "Power and fun are the themes of this year's Essen Motor Show, November 29 to December 8. 28th, 2002, and they match up perfectly with the characteristics of the Corsa OPC study, which will celebrate its world premiere at this year's show. It makes sense why this was missed by UK forums in particular, which are the ones popping off in 2005, because the original press release was in German, which makes sense of course considering the Essen Motor Show is of course in Germany, and it wasn't a Vauxhall Corsa C VXR, it was an Opel Corsa C OPC, meaning it wasn't even relevant to our market. It also explains exactly why it didn't get out on the roads. It was a study by Opel to match the theme of the show, power and fun. 180 brake horsepower is around the same amount that other Super Mini warm hatches had at the time, and fun was all of their bags. Every warm hatch was to some degree built to be a fun little runaround. Now that's not necessarily a full answer to the question though, as we've seen some companies turn up to events with concept cars and studies which people adore, then they build the real thing as a result of this hype, like the F-Type with the CX-16, but I would hazard that in this scenario, with the lack of any visible hype, it wasn't on their agenda. They may have planned for that potential eventuality given the car had all the right specs to challenge its competitors in the market, but the car was way too premium in terms of features to actually be a serious contender in the market. None of these cars were going to come out with Alcantara seats, for example. Now let's answer the first question. Why did it suddenly gain hype on forums in the UK in July 2005? I found multiple threads talking about the car, and I'm not 100% certain, but it seemed to have overlapped with rumours about the new generation Corsa coming out. People on the forums were arguing over whether the OPC would come as the Corsa C or Corsa D. Some people who were clearly more in the know made it obvious that the Corsa C OPC would never be released to the public, but many remained hopeful. Again, it's really hard to confirm completely as the first real photos of the Corsa D were released in early 2006, but people had clearly seen concept pics of some description of the D in 2005, as people were already complaining about it being ugly. Of course, with hindsight, those rumours were correct. There was a Corsa D coming, and there was an OPC or VXR version also arriving, but these rumours also bred that confusion around the Corsa C OPC. In researching for this video, I might have also found a reason as to why there was such little hype around the Corsa OPC. I tried to find photos of the car at the 2002 Essen Motor Show, but I couldn't easily find any. Some of you might be better or more committed than I am at hunting through old photos, and I'm sure there are some proper detectives among you, but I personally couldn't see any. What I could find was the Opel display at the show, because there was a car causing hype, the record-breaking Eco Speedster Study, which you do around 155 miles per hour, but only needed 2.5 litres of diesel per 60 miles. It was based on the Opel Speedster built by Lotus, and there are plenty of pictures of that at the show, with ardent blue OPC looking cars in the background, but the Corsa itself I haven't seen any confirmed sightings of. So my guess is that Eco Speedster lapped up all the attention while Opel's other studies didn't quite get the same love. I may be entirely wrong and not good enough at searching, but that's my running theory. If you worked for Opel at the time and know better, or attended the 2002 Essen Motor Show, I'd love to hear more. Bear in mind, I was only 7 years old when that show happened. But for me, that's a satisfactory ending to the Vauxhall Corsa C VXR's history. Huge thanks again to the patrons for making this possible. It was never going to happen, it was just wishful thinking by a bunch of Brits on Vauxhall forums. This is way less mysterious than the story behind the VW Polo Club Sport though, so go click here to see what happened there, and click here to subscribe to the channel for 2 videos every single week.